Good afternoon, or good morning for some of you. I'm Melvin Harmon, a returnee from the year program in Malaysia, and now a staff member at AFS-USA. Before we get started, I'd like to quickly cover just a few logistical points. Everyone is muted for the duration of the town hall. This helps to avoid those moments when we get to share in the barking of someone's dog or the sirens here in New York City. After each guest speaker has shared highlights related to their AFS experiences, we will take questions via the chat at the bottom of your screen. Using the chat function, just send your questions to me, and as long as we're on schedule, I will announce your questions for the guest speakers' responses. To help speed things along, try to send your questions during the guest speaker's presentation rather than after they've finished. I want to thank you again for joining us today, and I hope you enjoy everything we have planned for you. It's my pleasure now to introduce the president of AFS-USA, Tara Hoffman. Tara will be providing a very brief overview of today's AFS-USA and our priorities. So without further ado, I'll turn things over to Tara. Thank you all.
Thank you, Melvin, and welcome everybody. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. I want to start by acknowledging that we have so many different members of the AFS family joining us today. Alumni, current and former host families, natural parents, volunteers, and everyone who has joined us today has made a contribution to AFS-USA over the past year and a half. And I really want to thank all of you for that stalwart commitment. It is through the generosity and support of so many people who care so much about AFS that we have made it through what has been an extremely challenging year. And the purpose of today's town hall was we wanted to provide an opportunity to you all who have made a contribution to express our appreciation, but also to share a bit of information about where the organization is at today. And we also want to take some time for inspiration because it's a really exciting time of year. We're getting ready for next year's program. We have students getting ready to go abroad, host families getting ready to host, and there's a whole new energy which is really sustaining us as we continue to navigate some challenges. So I will talk just for a few minutes. I always have an open email or phone door policy. Any questions that you have about what I'm speaking about today, please feel free to drop me an email, and I'm more than happy to pick up the phone and have a chat if I don't cover everything that you might be interested in. So we've got here a slide. I'm just going to highlight really the 6 major priorities that not just me as the president and the team, but that the board of directors is focused on as we move into our 21-22 program year and having come out of such a challenging past year. The first one being managing our financial challenges. We will continue to face significant financial challenges for the foreseeable future. And I mean, to be frank, it's as simple as just looking at the volume. We are currently hosting 44 students on program. We would typically, or in 2019, hosted close to 2,000 students. And our projections for next school year, 21-22, are at about 55%. So we're looking to host between 1,100 and 1,200 students. And that will help bring stability, of course. But we have, so many influences on the nature of our work at AFS, and we will just have to navigate a tighter cash flow for a while. And of course, we're part of a network. We're so dependent on how our partners are performing and our partners recruiting students and finding host families as well. So we have quite an extended branch of our business as we look at coming back to solvency. Critical to that effort is advancing the AFS-USA school strategy. And this is one of the strategic plan's pillars for AFS-USA, moving forward quite aggressively in our efforts to have partnership with schools, to be giving back to schools, to teachers and principals and administrators who are so critical to enabling our program to happen. And we are on the course of developing curriculum, digital resources for teachers to bring intercultural learning alive into their classroom, and also better resources to help teachers see how they can benefit by having a student in their classroom, but also supporting going abroad for Americans to go abroad and have an intercultural global competency experience. As an organization, we are more committed than ever to becoming more diverse and inclusive. There are many communities that AFS-USA is not reaching. That brings a lot of potential to us, and we are more committed than ever in expanding more than our socioeconomic scholarship program, but diversifying our community engagement at the local level, broadening our openness to all kinds of host families and students, and being very cognizant of how diversity fits in all aspects of the organization's infrastructure, from our board composition to our staffing composition to our volunteer teams at the local level. Digitally transforming our programs and operations. We certainly learned a lot about digital programming very fast last year when mobility programming was not possible. Through the generosity and support of the Department of State, the Education and Cultural Affairs Department, we have received funding for our mobility programs that we were encouraged to then use to develop and offer digital programs to participants and families who couldn't have the physical exchange. And we learned a lot from that. And we learned that it has a lot of merit and can certainly be a complement to all of our programs when we do return to mobility. But we also have learned that how to better use technology to enhance and make our operations more efficient. It's no secret that AFS-USA had to make major reductions in the staffing. We just didn't have the revenue coming in to unfortunately keep the staffing levels that we've had. And so we've had to become much more efficient in how we work together, and we use technology to not only make the key elements of the operations side work, but to enhance the volunteer experience at AFS-USA by providing more digital resources and training and technology. Engaging our volunteers, critically important. I'm very happy to share that we have seen the numbers of registered volunteers come back up into the 3,000 range. We saw a dip, obviously, during COVID when there wasn't a lot of program activity going on, and we know that so many of our volunteers in the chapters and the teams across the country are motivated to volunteer to be involved in this student experience. So a lot of effort has gone into the past couple of months to provide opportunities for volunteers to connect virtually, again, using more digital tools. We've seen a lot of creative initiatives taking place at the local level, where even volunteers in their own teams have come together for virtual team meetings and enrichment activities. And of course, we've been engaging our volunteers in the virtual programming. We had an extremely successful volunteer summit last November, where we had almost 400 volunteers enrolled to participate. And traditionally, we would have about 100 volunteers who could come in person. So we were able to reach many more people. And that's an example of something we want to keep as part of all of our operations moving forward, that we can reach more people using virtual and digital tools. And overall, heightening the visibility of the organization. We have a great story to tell. We've always had a great story to tell, but we have a greater story now because we're still here and we're present and we're actively engaged with schools and local communities. And I think that's been a very powerful message to our donors and to the educators across the country, that we're still very actively pursuing our mission of intercultural learning, and that no COVID-19 is going to stop us from doing that. So those are really what we're most focused on as we plan out our operations and budget for next year. But then, Julie, next slide. We do have a number of key unknowns for the rest of 2021. I like to reference the expression of we've become very good at pivoting, because we have to be able to move to take advantage of opportunities that maybe weren't there before, but that we have to move quickly, and we have to always move with quality and solid support of our participants and our families. But we know that we have some key unknowns that are going to influence how we operate and where we operate over the next year, and even into 22, 23. So clearly COVID will have a continued impact on our business and recovery. And I'll give one example of that is there are some schools across the country, some districts that have said, unfortunately, we're not going to be accepting any exchange students next year. So we're pivoting quickly to take advantage of where in the country that we have volunteer support and can offer compliant programs to be present and expand perhaps our capacity in those areas of the country. Key unknown is what our hosting and sending participant volume will actually end up being. As I mentioned before, we are planning at about a 55% volume compared to 2019, but we still have a long way to go between today, April 27th, and August 11th, when the first batch of students will be arriving. We're confident and optimistic that all these students will be able to come, that schools will confirm their placements, that we will be able to have travel arranged for them. So we're just, we're staying focused and overcoming every challenge as it comes, but it is a question. The economy and COVID's impact on host families and their ability to host for a whole year. We all know that that is a big commitment. It's an emotional commitment, but it is also a financial commitment for many families. And to study abroad, that it's a significant investment that parents are making, and we're doing everything possible to ensure that the 130 students that we are scheduled to send abroad will go. And a lot of work goes into communicating with those students and parents, just as COVID is changing here on a daily or weekly basis, how it's evolving abroad. School placement confirmations, critical. We can't bring students in without school placement confirmations. And we have seen that number have an uptick in the past couple of weeks, where more schools are now coming forward and saying, yes, okay, we're committed. We can confirm that we will host next year. But this is going to be an ongoing challenge until we get all 1,100 to 1,200 students placed. Volunteer recruitment and engagement, how we can recruit new volunteers to come into the organization, how some of the new program activity and the resources that we're developing, especially digitally, can be used to engage and attract new volunteers to come in and do some different things with AFS programming. And of course, the AFS network, just as AFS-USA has had a challenging year, all 53 other AFS partners have had a challenging year and are working very hard to come back to viable program numbers and solid fundraising and revenue generation so that they can stay in the network. But we certainly are in a much better place than we were 6 to 8 months ago. We still have challenges and a long road ahead, but I'm very confident with the support of the board and the direction of the board and all of our volunteers who are so committed, and the great staff team that we are seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. So we just need to stay very focused on achieving these goals. Again, we would not be here today without the support of all of you and so many individuals who gave generously. So we thank you very much. And I'll use this as a chance to introduce and also thank Jane Ransom, a board member who's been integrally involved in this recovery strategy. And Jane is going to take over from here, but a little bit about Jane. She has been an executive director for the American Brain Foundation since 2015. She is a veteran nonprofit executive, having served as the chief executive of 7 leading nonprofit organizations, leading in their turnaround and startup initiatives. Jane's been on the board of directors at AFS-USA since 2020. joining us in the heat of the moment, one could say, and is an AFS returnee herself from Italy in 70-71. Jane credits her experience, quote, as the most formative experience of my entire life. I lean on it every day for both insight and confidence, unquote. So thank you so much, Jane, and over to you.
Thank you, Tara, and hello, everybody, and thank you so much for your support of AFS-USA. I really appreciate it. I'm honored to be here to share a little piece of my story. I know everyone has a rich story, but I'll throw mine out there for your consideration. And I'm really honored to be on the board of directors. So these pictures here, I think, you know, I'll date myself. I went in 1970. We took all our pictures with slides. I have a bunch of slides in a shoebox somewhere that I was not able to dig up for this. But the reason I'm showing you this slide of me with the guitar was, I think in 1970, every girl wanted to be Joan Baez, Joni Mitchell, or Judy Collins. So that's me, and we all wanted to be that while we were in Italy too. And over on the right is a poster for AFS Italy, and that's my group. I'm on the far right there. That was there in 1970-71. So I'm from Minnesota. In junior high school, I was going to a girls' school in St. Paul, and I was just in awe at the succession of high school students that came from other countries. There was a girl from India, there was a girl from Germany, there was a girl from South Africa. It really caught my imagination that someone could have this adventure of going to another country, making friends in a whole new land. And so I decided that's what I needed to do. Meanwhile, my family moved to a small rural town in southern Minnesota for my high school years. And in 11th grade, there was the opportunity to apply for AFS. So some of my friends and I applied. One of my friends went to Malaysia for the summer. I ended up going to Italy. I was interviewed twice at home by members of the local AFS chapter. And the interviewers turned out to be our family doctor and his wife. And the only question I can remember from these two interviews was them asking me whether I had a boyfriend. And I was sort of embarrassed to say that I did not, but I have friends who are boys, and everyone laughed. That's all I remember from the interviews. Of course, I was madly in love with my first boyfriend by the time I had to go to Italy in the summer of 1970, where I went for a year abroad in Reggio Emilia, which is an industrial city in the north of Italy. So I then went on to have your transformative AFS experience. I like to think I'm the only one, but no, lots of us have had it. And it helped to shape the rest of my life. And now I think back on my recruitment, which I did not give a second thought to. And I realized that AFS was built on volunteerism by community members who saw the good in international exchange. And I didn't give a second thought to these people. Now I see that AFS was able to help a girl from a tiny town in Minnesota have this amazing experience because of grassroots volunteers in my tiny little town. So I'm just so thankful to all AFS volunteers for what you do. It's a big reason for my volunteerism with the board of AFS-USA. We have a precious organization here. It changes lives. It turns people into global citizens, and that's worth volunteering for and supporting. It's just precious. So now just a few words about my year in Italy. There's far too much to tell, but it was a year of contradictions. My year was spent living in a castle, literally, with the family of a wealthy industrialist. And at the time, most AFS families were all wealthy. So I was doing that, living in a castle while going to high school with kids who were every stripe of communist and socialist. In the city, there was a huge billboard of Angela Davis in the city square. My experience included having a best friend whose farm family lived in a house with dirt floors, and it included skiing in the Dolomites in glitzy Cortina. And my first day of high school, this is what I was confronted with. Kids who sneered and called me a US imperialist. I was against the war in Vietnam. How could I be a US imperialist? A math teacher who was eager to humiliate me in front of the class to show that Americans aren't as good as math as everyone thinks they are. Kids who showed enormous goodwill and wanted to talk about American rock and roll in particular. Pieces of mouth-watering pizza to eat during morning break. And the entire school going on strike to support striking workers at a nearby factory. So that was day one. And it just kind of went from there. It didn't take me long to realize that this was a different reality where people saw things through a different prism than Americans did. My high school friends at home in America didn't talk much about politics and certainly didn't frame issues in terms of class distinction or something called the working class. And then I started to realize it's not just that there's two prisms, an American one and an Italian one. There's a different way of looking at things when I go home to my Italian family in the castle for dinner and talk about what happened at school that day. And then there's a whole different way when I'm talking with my communist and socialist friends at school. So I started to see, that we all see things from so many different perspectives, and eventually made the connection that that's true in our country too. There's no one way of looking at things. So I came back with the outlook that if societies and perspectives could be so different from one country to another, that must mean that the world must be somehow plastic and changeable. And I wanted to get involved in changing the world. And this is what led me into the nonprofit sector, a sector with organizations whose mission statements are more often than not about changing the world and making it a better place, as is the AFS-USA mission statement. My year in Italy helped me to understand the concept of cultural differences pretty deeply. It gave me incredible confidence, both not just in mastering a different language, but in learning how to power through some uncomfortable situations, all those contradictions I was talking about in the beginning. And I quickly, as I said, learned that there are so many different perspectives, and that my one tiny town, Minnesota rural perspective was just very one of them. I think that this has made me a better listener, at least I try to be, and a person who is open to differences and can find strength in differences if I work at it. So that's been a major thing for me. I've been able to carry these insights with me through life because of AFS-USA. I'm so glad to be on the board now, and so glad that we have programs that allow youth from all walks of life in the United States to have the kind of experience that I had. And I'm so happy that we bring youth from all around the world to the United States so that they can see both the joys and the worrisome aspects of American life. As a board member, a very new one, I just want to say the board is thrilled about moving forward into a promising new year with a new cohort of students for international exchange. And we're dedicated to thinking beyond the excitement of this coming year to build an AFS that is sustainable and smart about working in a changing environment. I want to thank everyone on this call for your support for AFS-USA. It is a precious organization. Thank you. I'm turning it back to you, Melvin.
I haven't received any questions, so we'll give everyone just a second here if you'd like to send one to me through the chat. And now we have one. What were a few key moments that changed the way you saw the United States and your identity as an American And how has your perspective on your identity as an American changed since then?
Wow. Well, one moment was that very first day of school when I was, I thought I was a pretty hip anti-war activist in my little town, and I got accused of being a US imperialist. It really took me aback. And I want to just throw in that I had the opportunity since AFS to live for 4 years in Italy due to my spouse's job. And our 13-year-old son got thrown into Italian school, and I got to watch him go through the experience similar to what I went through. And one day he came home in tears, having had an argument with his friends who said, "Mom, they just think we're warlike people with bad food." And that kind of summed it all up. It was kind of the experience I had. But I think that, I think that key moments for me were just hearing the differences between, this was a much more stratified society and less where we gloss over class differences quite a bit in the United States. But to hear, people in one house talking in a radically different way about what should be happening in their country versus people I was friends with, sort of helped me to, I guess it helped me to build my identity by understanding and trying to value those different viewpoints, and to understanding that I was going to confront them everywhere else in my life.
Okay, thank you, Jane. We have a comment. I had a similar experience in Belgium in 1980-81, but my host family were the socialists, not so much classmates.
Interesting. And I should throw in, we mostly had communists and socialists in school, but we did have someone who everybody called a fascist. Was in a part, everybody belonged to political parties too. And these were 16 and 17-year-old kids, which was just, very strange to me. And we had monarchists too. And people would say, "Oh yeah, he's a monarchist. He doesn't know what he's talking about."
Thank you again, Jane. I don't have any more questions to share. So unless we get one here in the next second, I will turn it over to Teddy Wydum. Let's go ahead. Thank you, Teddy.
Hi, everyone. It is so nice to be here with you all today. I'm Teddy. I'm from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, although I'm streaming to you from beautiful Brooklyn, New York City right now as we speak. And wow, Jane, what an inspiring and fun story that was. It's a tough act to follow. But I'm going to be telling you a little bit about my experience with AFS. I studied abroad with AFS in France from 2005 to 2006. And I think today I want to focus not so much on that year itself, but on what I did after that and sort of what that year unlocked for me and what that year meant for me, not at the end of 2006 when I really was very deep into all of it, but for the 15 years after that and how that experience has really stuck with me for all this time. And so I'll briefly tell you the photo at the top right here. I guess we're all wearing red shirts, but I'm the one in the middle at the right. And this is the day that my host family, the Roger family in France, welcomed me into their home in 2005. And for someone from urban Pittsburgh who got plopped into Southwest rural France, this was a very big change for me. And if you were to pan out the photo, you would see farmland around this house. And I'm saying I'm going to talk a little bit more about my time after AFS today. And so the two photos on the left are the day that my French host parents in 2017 met my biological parents in Pittsburgh. And that was, I suppose, maybe 12 or something years after my AFS experience. And that was one of the most special days of my life, to have that happen. And then also in the center, these are my French host parents with me and my roommates at the time, who were actually from Mexico, on the roof of my apartment in New York, celebrating the 4th of July together. And yeah, I wanted to just talk a little bit about what I did after that year. You know, the year in France, I was immersed in school, in literature, I was in music, I was immersed in the food and everything, all the amazing cooking that my host family, my mom and my dad did. And I was also immersed in the family life itself of that family. And I wanted to really mention that because it's such a hard thing, that family connection, that deep, deep bond that you end up having with these people is something that it's so difficult to show, even on a colorful brochure with lots of exciting pictures. It's a very difficult to capture that connection. And it's one that's with me every single day. And really, after my year in France, the entire trajectory of what I wanted to do and what I thought was possible to do was really almost unthinkable if I hadn't done my year in France. And like Jane, I had also been I just met AFS students in my high school and was blown away by them, and just that opened my eyes to the possibility of international travel and the courage that they had to leave their homes and sort of dive into the unknown. Um, and just having done that and having had the support from AFS to allow me to do this thing that a year prior I would have never thought was possible was just so amazing. And so after that year, I ended up studying Spanish and Chinese in high school and in college. Not really out of choice, but just because I no longer needed to be in French class. And that sort of really altered the trajectory of everything I did after that. And I studied at McGill in Montreal. I studied in English, but I worked in restaurants as a busboy, food runner, dishwasher, and all of my work in Montreal was in French. And really thinking back, it's sort of like you learn and grow so much more almost from that work in the community, in the restaurants, in the trenches a little bit. And it's sort of similar to AFS. It's like, yes, you learn some stuff at school, but really it's your experience being in that community that's what's really going to stick with you. And yeah, having sort of been put into Chinese class after not needing to take French anymore, I got very into it, and I minored in Chinese in college, and I eventually moved to Southeast China, and I worked in a town called Shenzhen, sort of managing relationships between factories and clients in the US. And I can really, really see how AFS is just at the root of all of this, because even imagining having the confidence to do that, or having the idea that such a move would be possible, is really hard to sort of think of without having that base, you know, that first experience of being abroad with the support in 2005, and building that confidence, building that knowledge that this is possible. And then that's sort of the foundation for everything else being possible later on. And when I was in China, I got very interested in software, and I eventually moved back to the US, where I'm now, I've worked at a few medium-sized startups, and I now work for the website builder Squarespace, and I'm leading a team of software engineers now, which seems a little bit unrelated to my previous sort of AFS experience until you start making the connections of programming languages and speaking in different languages, communicating in different languages, leading a team where there's people from different backgrounds. The culture of the team is so important to what you can accomplish. And so almost everything I've done since AFS has been deeply just because of that opportunity that I got from AFS. And so I want to thank the webinar organizers just for the chance to reflect on that and realize how deep the connections go. And I also really want to thank all of the donors to AFS, all of the host parents, especially my host parents, my parents, all of the volunteers. And yeah, thank you so much for the opportunities that you're providing. They are life-changing for all of us.
Thank you very much, Teddy. I have a comment for Jane, actually, and then a question for you, Teddy, or rather, I think it's a comment as well. Delighted to see the AFS AI poster, Jane. I was raised in a small Italian town, and AFS AI volunteers somehow found me, and the rest is my 1968-69 AFS year in Dallas. The importance of volunteers. I have made America my home since 1970, Italian by birth, American by choice.
Bellissimo.
Then we have a comment. Teddy, I was a host sibling for a girl from France and can say that after 51 years, I remain close to her children. Unfortunately, she passed away. I hope you have as many wonderful years with your host siblings.
Thank you so much for that comment.
And also, Teddy, when you speak to young people today who might not even be contemplating an AFS experience, what would you say is key to igniting their interest and encouraging them to consider it?
Wow, what a wonderful question. That is really a tough one because I feel that what really ignited my curiosity and my drive to explore this were the people my age who I saw coming into my high school and who I became friends with and spoke to on a sort of daily basis. And I think that those sort of direct connections are just so special and something that it's very hard to recreate in a single conversation or like a single piece of advice to a young person. I think it's a wonderful question, and I really don't know the answer to it.
Not a problem. We are short on time, so that just moves us along a bit. But thank you, Teddy. We want to, before we go to our next speaker, Christine, we want to show you a video. So we're going to move ahead in the order of the slides, Julie, and share this video with you, and then we'll come back to Christine.
How you doing, folks? My name is Patrick Kelleher. I want to answer a couple questions about my experience so far in the country of Paraguay. I got a script here. My experience so far has been full of meeting new people and eating new foods. Hold on, there's a motorcycle crossing. So far, I haven't really been able to travel to too many places, but in substitute for that, I go on walks every morning to explore new parts of the city, and most importantly, new places to eat. What meaningful relationships have I created? Since my school is all online, I haven't been able to see my classmates every day. However, Reaching out to them and asking them to hang out has not been a problem. The students are so thrilled to have a new peer in their school. We've been eating out and spending time at each other's houses, just having a good time. The AFS staff and volunteers were extremely helpful in our first week of our trip when we were quarantining back at Asuncion. They answered all of our questions that we had and provided additional support for the changes that we were going through. My next question. What have I learned so far? In the month and a half that I've been here, I have learned more Spanish than I have in high school or my entire life. I've also learned about the street safety of Paraguay. I've learned about the foods and the drinks and how and when we get together to eat. For example, back home in the US, we eat breakfast and dinner together. But in Paraguay, we only eat lunch together. That allows us to make breakfast and dinner on our own. I like that. I like that a lot, actually. For the last question, how do I think this experience will impact my future, my career, my perspectives, my goals? I think this experience will impact my future in a couple different ways. I will be given a little bit more patience than those around me, because even though we may speak the same language, we may not be on the same page. 2, whenever I am in a difficult time, I know there's a way out. 3, if I want something, I shouldn't be afraid to ask for it. If it's a job promotion or a party that I wasn't invited to, I feel like I'll be able to ask without feeling uncomfortable. 4, I think this experience will help me understand that I have no control over what goes on in life. And once I think I do, another crazy thing happens just to show me that I really don't. I think this is really important because it's not about how tough we are. It's about how many times we can get back up again. So I hope this has given you a little insight of what's been happening during my daily life in Paraguay. Things get tough, but we gotta keep on moving and grooving to the beat of life, baby. That's the way things go. We'll see you later. I hope you guys enjoyed my little video. If you didn't, don't spread negativity. Anyways, I'll see you guys later. Stay cool.
So Patrick is an AFSer from Colorado, and his goal is to become a film producer. And I think we might see his name in lights sometime in the future, so stay tuned. Now I want to turn things over to Christine. Christine Wasserman, or rather, I think we got that wrong. Let's see, where are
Yes, you did. That's okay. It's Winkle.
Yes, sorry, Christine. Thank you.
No problem. No problem. That was a fantastic video. I mean, if it was hard to follow Teddy's and Jane's presentations, following the young generation is going to be really hard. My name is Chris. I was an AFS student from Washington, Illinois to Sao Paulo, Brazil in the summer program of 1965. Before my senior year, I was able to go because of the Rotary Club of Washington was financed my summer abroad. Now, these two photos show you the family. However, the captions are exchanged there. They were both in 1965. The photo on your right is actually with the caption on your left. And that's the photo that was taken. It wasn't a photo, it was a slide taken at the airport when I was leaving. I'm the person in the middle with the dark hair. And at the left, you see the photo of the family in the northeast of Brazil going the vacation we took, okay? The family had 3 daughters, aged 19, 17, and 9. And the origins of the family was German, the same as mine. And I was also able to travel in Brazil to the interior and to Rio de Janeiro with AFS. During college, I was a member of the AFS club. And then after college, I received a Fulbright fellowship to go to Brazil from 1969 to 1970. I then married a Brazilian and had 2 children. We went back to grad school in the States. And after that, moved to Rio de Janeiro, where I worked at the Catholic University and then for 2 mining companies. Two of my AFS sisters moved to Germany and one stayed in Sao Paulo. Finally, I moved to Sao Paulo from Rio in 2015. Over the years, I've kept contact with my sisters and we've had a great wonderful memories. I'd like to show you another slide here with some pictures, just a few that I picked out. In the picture on the right is 1995. That's me with my three sisters. This was a 30-year reunion when the two sisters who live in Germany came to Sao Paulo. Again, there's me with the dark hair. Then on the left with the AFS ambulance, you will see Erica and I at the Centennial in Paris in 2014. And finally, in 2015, I decided to organize a 50-year reunion for my AFS group. However, only one person came, who is Janet Davison, USA to Brazil, and she's on the left. I'm in the middle with the white hair, and my sister Ingrid on the right. As you can tell, AFS has been a big influence on my life. My two kids and my three grandkids are all dual nationals, Brazilian and American, but they have lived most of their lives here in Brazil. I have a great many Brazilian friends, but I've also been able to keep up with my American friends. And my career, besides 1 year at the World Bank, has been here in Brazil. So besides the impact on my family, my friends, and my career, AFS was important in determining my legacy when I retired. As an AFS student, I saw how independent, knowledgeable, and open to change that 17-year-olds are. During my career, first as a university professor and then as a manager, I mentored younger people, giving them challenging opportunities and watching them grow. I am proud to say that they have been successful and many of them keep in contact, although I have been retired for 11 years. Thank you for your time. I enjoyed talking with you today.
Thank you so much, Chris. Next, I'm going to turn things over to Alan, unless someone has a question for Chris. Let's see. No, I don't have any questions, Chris. So we'll move along to Alan Evans. Thank you, Chris.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Melvin. Yeah, so my name's Alan Evans. I grew up in Vermont. I participated in an AFS program to Germany under the CBYX scholarship in 2001. And on the slide here, you can see me as a 18-year-old with my host brother there in the lower right after picking some mushrooms, which were cooked in the traditional Bavarian fashion, and I could barely stomach them, to the great dismay of my host mother and brother and the whole family. Really, it was quite embarrassing. And at the Salt Cliffs in the north of East Germany. And on the left there is a class of AFS scholarship students to Germany just from a couple of years ago. And on the upper right, when I finished my work with those AFS students in Germany, I visited my former host brother and his now wife and my host niece and nephew there, the children. So yeah, in my role working on scholarships at AFS, I think that's what I can add to this conversation. I moved to New York from Vermont to begin working at AFS a little over 10 years ago. And since then, I've worked with well over 1,000 American participants. I'd like to tally them at some point. It might be closer to 1,800. And many of them have never been outside of their home state or their home region of the US before going on the program. And actually a sizable number had never been on an airplane before participating in an AFS scholarship program. And when they return from the program, I just hear over and over again, you know, their whole mindset has changed. They come to realize they live in a global world. Their interests, their goals, the careers they've taken on since then have been completely shaped by their AFS experience. And I think in addition to being aware of those new opportunities, they have a new approach to problem solving. They take greater responsibility for their own impact on the world and their actions. They're super confident and they're unbelievably adaptable. A couple examples I'd like to share. Wanjiku, who goes by Wawa, she went on an AFS program to Thailand with our scholarship in 2015. Since returning, she completed her studies in environmental studies and became the first African-American person to receive both the Truman and the Udall scholarships. And right now she's studying at Oxford in England on a Rhodes Scholarship. She's become a leader in the environmental justice movement, and she has tens of thousands of followers on social media. Another is Anket, who went to Indonesia in 2011 on a scholarship with AFS. Anket's from Inglewood, California. Since completing the program, she completed her master's at Dartmouth College under a scholarship from the State Department, the Pickering Scholarship. She's now on her first posting as a US Foreign Service officer with the State Department in Hong Kong. And she reflects actually on having met a cultural attaché at the US Embassy in Jakarta during her AFS year in Indonesia as the inspiration for her studies and her current career. And then lastly, I'll just mention about Jack from Michigan, who went to the Philippines in 2016. Jack actually just moved to Taiwan during the pandemic to continue growing the apparel company that he co-founded with a friend after receiving funding from the Techstars Sports Accelerator, which is a business incubator. So this is just a couple of inspirational examples of the alumni that, before program, when we were at our pre-departure orientation, they were sitting quietly, looking intimidated, obviously wondering, should I really be going on this program for 10 months tomorrow? And when they got back, they were very loud and very proud of their experience, and it took them to really interesting and engaging places. So I just feel so thankful that I was able to participate in a scholarship program to Germany, that I've been able to remain in touch with my host family, and that I've been able to connect with so many fantastic students who've gone through the programs. And what I wanted to wrap up with is just to share that, like Teddy said, it's the host families and the volunteers and the generosity of people around the world that make programs like this possible, the goodwill. And I included here on this slide a couple of fun photos from meeting with some AFS colleagues. The first one was at a photo wall we had at a conference at the Ministry of Education in Jakarta, Indonesia. And second, meeting with an AFS staff person and a Russian language teacher for our AFS scholarship students to a small town, Kirov, in central Russia. So thank you so much for having me join you this afternoon.
Thank you, Alan. We don't have time to take any questions. We have about 6 or 7 minutes left, although there's one question I will ask you quickly. Which Bad Neustadt was this? There are at least a dozen in Germany, and I was in one of them, 1989 to 90.
Bad Neustadt an die Saale. Saale,
Okay.
on the Saale River in northern Bavaria.
Same for the person asking the question.
Ah, sehr schön.
Okay,
Beautiful town.
great. Justin, we have enough time for one more guest to talk with us.
Great. Thank you, Melvin. I'll try to not go over the time. Really happy to be here and hear everyone's stories today. My name is Justin DeAndrade. I'm a returnee from an AFS program to Honduras in 2007, and I'm also currently a staff member here at AFS. So I highlighted there over to the left, I have a picture with my host mom and my host brother. I lived in Santa Barbara, Honduras. It was on the northern area, about 4 hours from the capital city. And then I also included a picture of me and all of the other AFS participants on one of our trips that we took together as a group. We went to visit some of the ruins. I believe when I was there, there was about 35 participants from about 7 different AFS destinations around the world. So it was a really cool experience to live with the host family, have that experience, and then also get to make connections with people from different destinations around the world that were right there with me. And just to speak a little bit, I think a lot of the stories that everyone was mentioning here, I can mimic them. I sort of look at my AFS experience at this point as coming full circle. I found out about AFS through my high school. We had an AFS club. The sponsor was an AFS returnee from France. So we would have meetings, once a week, and it would be all other students of my school that were interested in learning about her experience and learning about AFS as an organization. So that really sparked my interest in seeing if this is something that I wanted to do. I had never left the US before, and not quite the first time I wasn't on a plane. I'd only traveled once. I had taken one plane ride prior to this to do a family trip to Florida. So when I was applying for my AFS program, I was a bit nervous to tell my mom because she had also never left the US before. So I wasn't sure really how she was gonna take this news. And so then finally I had to let her know, hey, I started an application. I'm thinking about going to study abroad in Honduras. And I think she had a bit of a heart attack. But what was really great about it, and I think what is so critical about the volunteers, is that when the AFS volunteer did come to do my in-home interview, that is finally what sort of put my mom at ease and got her buy-in to let me have this experience. So my experience was incredibly transformative. It really influenced a lot of the decisions I've made since. I went on to study international relations and minor in Spanish at Brown University. And really, I credit my AFS experience in helping me to make that decision. I was also able to study abroad again in Barcelona, Spain, and taking university level courses in Spanish. I honestly don't know if I would have been able to do it without having this previous experience that I had with AFS. And then finally in 2015, I sort of made the leap of faith to pack up my bags and move from Providence, Rhode Island down to New York City. I didn't have a job. I wasn't really sure what I was going to do. And somehow I came across a job posting with AFS. And it was sort of a really cool thing to see that this organization that I really hadn't had a big connection with since my experience, I had the opportunity to maybe start my career there. So I started my career at AFS. I work in our study abroad experience department, which is really great because now I'm able to work with students and parents from the US interested in studying abroad, and I can share my experience with them and help them get through the application and the admissions process. And so some of the other photos I added here are just through my time working at AFS. So in the top, I was able to actually lead a group of 15 students on a 2-week global prep program to Egypt. So that was a really cool opportunity to have. And then in 2019, I was actually able to travel to Japan and meet with the AFS Japan staff to just make some connections with them, talk a little bit about what was going on here at AFS-USA, and also learn a bit from their office and make those connections. So it's been a really kind of cool experience to have never left the US before, to now being able to work at AFS, meeting all the host families, volunteers, and especially being able to speak to the students that are interested in having this experience.
Thank you, Justin. We have about a minute left, so I'm going to turn it back over to Tara so that she can wrap things up for us.
Right.
Tara?
That was just, you know, everything we were hoping to be was inspirational. And I think it's just such a breath of fresh air to take an hour to listen to these stories and be reminded about how powerful AFS is for so many people and how important it is in the world. Thank you, Jane, Teddy, Chris, Alan, Justin, and Patrick. I think you're all going to be following Patrick on his YouTube videos now. We'll send out a link. But we do want to also suggest there's many different ways to get involved, to find out what's going on. Julie's got our alumni at AFSUSA.org email. You can always reach any of us through this. Some ideas of having reunions, sharing your experience, hosting an international student, making presentations for the ones still in school, and making sure we have your updated information. We also want to put a plug in for, you know, the best influence of AFS is word of mouth. So please, I think, Julie, we've got one more slide. Social media, tell your stories, connect with us. We have lots of great testimonials and stories, especially of students, you know, in COVID, still having this meaningful experience. So please look us up if you need some guidance in how to get there. Julie can certainly help you. Thank you again for all of your support. And we're going to be continuing to have more town halls like this. And we're always looking for ideas, so please share them with us at our alumni email or directly to Marlene Baker, our Chief Officer of Development. And thank you for joining us. I'm glad we got that in. It's 4 o'clock on the dot. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.